damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
Hello everybody, this is Robert Curtis, aka Lucky. I am coming to you with what I'm tentatively calling two idiots talking about MMA. I am the professional idiot. I am a columnist on whatculture.com as well as other places. And joining me, I have the idiot savant of mixed martial arts, the number one Sakuraba fan, Derek Longhorn.
How's it going, everybody?
This is actually technically going to be our debut episode for whatculture.com. So thank you to all the new listeners. Please be nice to us. Remember, I did say in the beginning, we are idiots. So let's talk about some little bit of news first that broke before the event. And the first one is that Strikeforce officially set its own euthanasia date.
Yeah, well, Strikeforce is disbanded. Kind of mixed emotions on that one. I liked watching the Strikeforce cards on Showtime, but I am very happy to see the fighters get some more fights. They just didn't put on enough fight cards, so I'm actually excited to see what happens, especially with WMMA and some of the top guys in some of the divisions over at Strikeforce coming to the UFC. Be interesting to see how they fare against the UFC's top caliber athletes.
This is what strikes me about Strikeforce, is I really think that it lasted 6 months longer than it should have, this sort of baton death march into nothingness. Yeah. I think it was either, and I can't say for certain, it was either the ego of Scott Coker or the ego of Showtime, because it was clear the promotion was dead.
Absolutely.
They were letting their fighters, they're letting their fighters, particularly top-level fighters like Gilbert Melendez, waste in anonymity and inactivity, not collecting any money and wasting their prime. I think very early on, Dana was actually keen on making Strikeforce into something like a competing brand within the same Zuffa house. And he tried to get involved. He tried to help them on a production level. And from what he intimated, they basically told him to go piss off. And so he stepped back, and then all of a sudden the bottom completely dropped out of Strikeforce, and they put on one card in 64 years.
Yeah. I personally believe it was Showtime. Showtime seemed to be very hard to deal with. I mean, with some of the things that Dana was saying, it seemed like it was basically all Showtime's deal. I think Scott Coker is actually a pretty good guy. I wonder what they'll do with him now that Strikeforce is disbanding. It'd be nice to see him have a little bit of a job in the UFC because I think he does. I think he always did a really great job.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, is that what Zuffa's done with previous acquisitions has been, like Pride and WEC, has been much more streamlined, more natural in its progression towards integration. This was literally just someone taking Strikeforce out into a field and making them wait 48 hours before then beating them with baseball bats like Joe Pesci in Casino. It was ugly and it was stupid. Strikeforce's official date of death does actually open up a pretty interesting thing. They've got a handful of really, really good talent as well as a stable of sort of medium to average fighters. Who do you want to see from Strikeforce transition over immediately to the UFC?
Well, first of all, I can't wait to see the women in the UFC. I know their first two acquisitions were Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate. I really wouldn't like to see that fight again. I'm hoping they get some more people. Maybe Sarah McMahon, who is a silver medalist in freestyle wrestling in the 2004 Olympics. I personally would like to see that fight more than anything. It would bring a lot of legitimacy to women's MMA with both of the Olympic athletes fighting. Besides the females, there are some really big names that I just love to see. Mousasi comes to mind, Jacare, Cormier, people like that. As far as people other than that, I mean, all the champions, Marquardt, Rockhold, Gilbert Melendez, it's really exciting, to be honest. I hope they can bring them all in and get some great fights going.
Let's talk about the top matchups for the guys coming over from Strikeforce. Let's start with, say, Gilbert Melendez.
Gilbert Melendez, I'd like to see him fight Donald Cerrone or the winner of Maynard versus Lozon. Personally, I think those are great matchups for him. Very high up in the rankings.
Do you think that Melendez will be sort of in the same track as a Jake Shields? They'll bring him in, give him one challenging fight, and then give him a title shot?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
They should.
I don't know. I've always thought that Gilbert Melendez, he hasn't been challenged enough, and we haven't really seen him against the best. So until we see that, we don't really know what his true capabilities are. Fighting Josh Thompson. Josh Thompson's a great competitor, but, I mean, he fought him 3 times, and he didn't really look that great any of the times, to be honest. I mean, it seemed like they were kind of tailor-made for each other. But I'd like to see him against the top guys. Especially, I'd really like to see a Cerrone fight, to be honest.
So pick a couple more Strikeforce guys that you want to see, predict some matchups, and then we'll move on.
All right. I'd really like to see Mousasi in there. Maybe fight a Vinny Magalhaes or a Bader. I'd like to see Jacare fight Jake Shields after Jake Shields comes off of his suspension. I think that'd be a really fun fight. Marquardt fighting Dong Hyun Kim would be pretty awesome. Dong Hyun Kim looked amazing tonight or earlier today. As far as like some other people, I'd like to see Barnett face Frank Mir. That is one of the I thought of that earlier and I got absolutely completely excited. I think that is an amazing matchup and I think it'd be very fun. They're both coming off of title losses and I think it'd be great.
I do like that too, and I think that they can kind of do like a little rotation between Barnett, Mir, and Verdum, and just find out who the best submission wrestler in the heavyweight division
awesome.
is. And by the way, when you said that you got excited, that's not the words you used to me when you chatted me.
That is true.
I'll save that expletive for another time.
Can I mention one more guy?
Sure.
Rockhold. I think he should fight the winner of Bisping or Belfort for the number one contender fight. I've been very impressed by Rockhold recently.
Rockhold Bisping would be a good one. One thing that I am worried about, you mentioned Mousasi against Bader.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Mousasi match up against a striker right off the bat.
Yeah, that would be nice. I just don't think there are any... What?
I was going to say, he's shown a severe weakness to takedowns.
That is true.
You did mention women's MMA, and some fairly groundbreaking stuff here. Ronda Rousey was the first woman ever signed into the UFC after Dana White said emphatically he didn't see it happening. He softened, he warmed, and then said it was inevitable. They signed Miesha Tate, I think most of this is unconfirmed. So TMZ.com reported Rousey and Miesha Tate's also been rumored. But
actually, Ariel Helwani actually confirmed it. So.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a couple of different things that need to be considered here. First off, what does the UFC do with their women's fighters? And then secondly, what does this mean for women's MMA as a whole? Why don't we start with the UFC?
I think they need to start signing more people. I'd also like to see them work well with Invicta. Dana seems to have a pretty good relationship with Shannon Knapp, the owner of Invicta. So hopefully they maintain a working relationship going forward because they did have some crossover talent in Invicta and Strikeforce. So it'd be interesting if they decide to do that again in the UFC. I'm kind of doubt they will, but I hope they maintain kind of an open relationship where they can take people from Invicta without major trouble, and Invicta can just bring up new stars.
I'm glad you brought up Invicta, and there's other female promotions in other places like in Japan. Actually, female MMA in Japan is pretty popular.
Yeah.
Strikeforce had two divisions, 135 and 145. Invicta has five, all the way down to atomweight, 105. So that's why I think that Invicta can coexist with the UFC promotion because they'll always have more talent because they've got more weight classes. And the UFC can use that as a feeder system and bring in the very, very best from there and from other places. We did have one of our buddies over on MMAshare.com drop this comment. He said, this is Demon Fist 45. There are some Brazilian women that fight that are actually far better than a lot of the American fighters back in the UFC. And I think his point is a good one. Because Invicta is a regional small promotion, they don't have the money to really scout globally. Where the UFC, as they go to the different markets, the Brazils, China, Europe, they can look around and say, okay, here are some badass females. Let's get them on our promotion, or at least give them some regional fights and scout them. I honestly think the UFC picking up Ronda Rousey is a significant step forward for women's martial arts.
Yeah, I agree.
We had a comment from Gillespie from MMAshare.com. Maybe this will lure Gina back to mixed martial arts. What do you think?
I don't think so. I think Gina's fine with what she's doing. I don't really see much going on in the 145-pound division. I'm honestly not really even expecting them to sign Cyborg just because there isn't much talent in 145. If Gina gets the urge to come back and drop down to 135, then maybe, but I think she's fine. I think she's happy with what she's doing, and I don't really think she'll come back.
We did have a very interesting tweet regarding women's martial arts from Manny Gambarian. He wrote, now it's time for the tough girls, i.e. an ultimate fighter for women. I think that's a brilliant idea.
I love it. I love that idea. For one thing, Ultimate Fighter is absolutely stale. I feel like they're just getting a bunch of meatheads to come in, as evident by the "Let Me Bang, Bro" video. I don't know if anybody's seen that. It's
Yep.
absolutely hilarious. I would love to see that new fresh take on the Ultimate Fighter. I think Ronda versus either Misha Tate or Sarah McMahon, probably Misha Tate because she's just more marketable than Sarah McMahon, would be a great season. Get some people from Invicta on there if Invicta's willing to work with them, and get some new talent in. I think it'd be awesome. I think it's a great idea.
MV6, aka Trey, our buddy, wrote on MMAshare.com, what do you think happens to Invicta if and when the UFC does a women's tough? Do you think that will just drain them of fighters? Because obviously you can't go and apply for tough if you're under contract with Invicta.
I don't think it will. As far as Invicta goes, I mean, as you said before, they have down to the atomweight division. They have 105, 115, 125, 135, and above. So, and as I truly believe that they will only have a 135-pound division, at least for quite a while. So
Yeah.
I don't think it will really affect Invicta very much. And Invicta has worked with Zuffa in the past with Strikeforce, so I think they'll be open for it. I'm pretty sure Shannon Knapp is just basically for getting women's MMA to the main stage. I really think she really cares about the sport and cares a little bit less about her own marketability and her own money. For her, I think she has a love for the sport and wants it to grow.
Let's talk about UFC on Fuel TV. We'll start with the prelims. We'll go through these really quickly until we get to the main card. The first one was Ricky Fukuda versus DeBlah. That's what the guy's name should be. It should be DeBlah. Very boring.
Yeah.
Boring fighter.
He trains with Frankie Edgar, which is
Well,
he dealt with Hurricane Sandy. That might have affected his work rate that night because he didn't really look like he had much gas. Fukuda got the takedowns basically at will, and he did great clinch work with some knees in the clinch. Basically just outworked him. At one point, Mark Goddard did extremely terrible stand-up, and we'll talk about him later. He also did another one in another fight, which was kind of disturbing to see. Yeah.
I like Ricky Fukuda, and I think his coaches basically had a little game plan for him, and I don't know if it really had anything to do with DeBlah, or DeBlas, whatever you want to call it. I think the first round they said, get your takedowns, and he did. And the second round, I think they said, do your clinch and your Greco, and he did. And he kind of implemented, it seemed like whatever he was wanting to do. And then in the third round, like you said, DeBlah faded completely, I think partly because of his cardio. I think the travel to China probably had a reverse effect than the Asian fighters coming to America. And I also think Fukuda looked like he landed some pretty hard body shots.
Oh, absolutely. Also, Fukuda went to AKA. I don't know if you heard that. And he started training there. So it seems like it's really improved his game.
Fukuda earned a unanimous decision. Let's move on, and that was a 185 middleweight fight. Let's move on to the Arishitani versus Lineker fight at 125.
Lineker immediately established his lead kicks and went for some high kicks. Mainly uses hooks. He doesn't really set anything up with jabs and straights. Arishitani looked really great in the first round because he was maintaining the outside, landing good kicks. But it was evident from the very beginning that Arishitani does not have very good defense. He holds his chin really high, and that's why he got caught by Joseph Benavidez in his UFC debut. He has great footwork and movement, but Lineker just found a way to cut him off in the ring and just pushed him up against the cage with hooks and
I was watching Lineker pretty closely because he seemed like he was nervous as hell during weigh-ins, and he actually missed his weight against Luis Gaudino in his last fight. Mm-hmm. So I was wanting to see if he would gas. He didn't seem like it affected him at all, so good for that. Oh. What I saw was this. I saw Lineker trying to debo Arishitani in the first round, stalking, looking for huge hooks, stalking, and I think Arishitani knew the line on Lineker, and he got the fuck out of there, which is why the first round was pretty boring, I thought. There were a little bit of flurries, but Lineker wasn't taking any time to really set anything up. Like you said, he didn't have a jab. He didn't do a straight. All he was throwing were hooks and power shots. Yeah, round two, he had a nice flurry right at the beginning of the round. Obviously, there was an eye poke. And I think only after Arushatani realized that he was basically losing the fight in the third round, and I don't know if I think he probably respected Lineker's power a bit too much, did he actually try to unleash his own offense without all of that dancing and staying away. And Lineker, to his credit, I mean, obviously they're flyweights. Lineker does have a chin.
Yeah, he does. I was surprised that Urshtani didn't go for any takedowns. I mean, I expected him to.
Lineker got a unanimous decision on that one. The next fight was on the main card, but was moved back down to the prelims, and that is Alex Caceres versus Tezuka Matanabu, and they are 135ers.
I actually really like this fight. I mean, it was pretty funny in a way. Matanabu Tezuka came out with that hilarious mask on, kind of in the vein of pro wrestling and in a bit
Or
like
Japan combat sports on any level.
Yeah, exactly. Right when they entered the cage, though, Alex looked like the bigger man immediately.
Oh,
He looked
huge.
huge. Like he's a very big guy for this weight.
He's the John Jones of this weight class. He's got a
Yeah.
73-inch reach compared to Matanabu with a 66.
Yeah,
That's huge.
Yeah, he looked massive in there, and he looked great. I mean, the first round, Tezuka got the double leg takedown. Caceres works from the bottom, but Tezuka it seems like he has really good submission defense. Mark Goddard then gets another stand up, which was absolutely disgraceful. Tezuka I'd like to see Tezuka in the future. He seems to be a pretty great wrestler. He has great entries into takedowns, but with somebody like Caceres who has great takedown defense, it didn't work for the entire fight. So
I actually completely disagree. I think Caceres is the guy that gave Matanabu all of his takedowns. I think and I think this is part of Caceres' problem. He's too flashy and he's too immature when it comes to his game plan. In round one, he's facing a one-dimensional wrestler. So what does he do? He throws a lot of kicks, and he gets taken down. In round two, halfway through the round, he's throwing kicks and getting taken down. Now, he's getting up. Matanabe doesn't seem to be interested in doing anything on the ground. No submissions, not even striking. When he got side mount, he just sat there. And honestly, I don't blame Goddard for standing them up, because Matanabe looked like he was breastfeeding.
I thought he was doing work. I mean,
Then, at the end of round two, and round three, Caceres finally realized he's got a 7-inch reach advantage and just stayed outside, and the jab won him the fight.
That is true. Yeah, Caceres did great work from the outside. I mean, Tezuka had really no striking. I mean, I don't know what he was doing in that third round where he put his hands in front of his face and stood up really straight. I don't know if you saw that. That looked absolutely ridiculous.
He needs to get a different haircut, too. That's just not working.
I loved it. Yeah, Tezuka's loss, he really couldn't do anything with the takedowns. He couldn't routinely get his takedown and work his ground and pound, the ground and pound wasn't that great, but if he could have worked it, he could have ran away with the decision. But
I'd like to see Matanabe against another wrestler, just to give him sort of a final chance. Caceres, he has got to implement a smarter game plan early on. I was happy, though, that he did get some Bruce Leroy love from the crowd, which surprisingly was almost completely Anglican. There was hardly any Asian faces in the crowd at all.
I know, it's crazy.
All of the prelims went to a decision, which is very, very weird. That almost never happens in the UFC. Let's get to the main card.
All right.
First fight was Takeya Mizugaki versus Jeff Howland. You could automatically tell when this fight started that we went from the prelims to the real deal, because these guys, you could just tell from the energy level and the pace that this was another level of mixed martial arts from what we saw for the previous three fights.
Absolutely. I love Takeya Mizugaki.
Hell yeah.
He is a very, very well-rounded fighter. He started out by establishing his strikes, and Hoagland, to be honest, in my opinion, you said that it was another level of mixed martial arts. I think Hoagland wasn't on another level of mixed martial arts.
Agreed.
I think he looked out of his league right when the fight started. He went for lazy takedowns, didn't get any of them, really. Mizugaki got great body clinch takedowns, and just landed that ground and pound. Mizugaki just landed ground and pound the whole fight, and Hoagland looked gassed entering the second round.
I'm glad you said the body clinch takedowns, because that's what I love about watching cards outside of the United States. In the United States, you've got a lot of freestyle wrestlers, and you get singles and doubles. When you watch cards outside of the United States, you get all of these jiu-jitsu and judo takedowns, and there were probably 7 body clinch takedowns I love it.
It's
They just
great.
loop their arms around you and then they just push you back with a trip or something. I love it. Here's a comment from MMA Ham from MMAshare.com about Jeff Howland. He pulled guard the whole fight. That's like the suicide of wrestle fucking. I can't think of a better way to describe it than that. He literally pulled guard, and Mizugaki was absolutely fearless, throwing down ground and pound, huge shots, did not give a damn about Hoagland's guard. In the first round, Hoagland definitely tried to have an active guard, but round 2, not so much. Round 3, please just ring the bell.
He
blow
was
the
just
whistle.
gassed. I really think he was just gassed out. That ground and pound took a lot away from him.
And this brings us to another point. We've got all of the Asian fighters so far winning, and Fukada in particular and Takeya Mizugaki did not look like Asian fighters as they fight in America. They looked fresh, they had energy at a very high level, and we'll see that again later on with Kim. Do you really think that there's something about Asians or people from the East flying over to the United States and losing their gas tank along the way?
I do. I mean, I've never flown outside of the United States, so I wouldn't know what it's like to be fully jet lagged. But there's got to be something because it's just every single fighter you see it happening. I mean, there has to be something. It can't just be a coincidence with all these guys.
Aravir, another member, said, I'd like to hear you guys talk about the Asian fighters' performance overall. I've heard multiple times that Asian fighters don't perform well in the States, and there's obviously reasons behind it. I'd like to hear your thoughts. To echo what you said, I have flown back and forth between the United States and Australia. And when you fly, it takes literally about a week for you not to be waking up in the middle of the night thinking it's morning. A week. You're initially tired for 2 or 3 days. And so if you're coming over for the most grueling cardio endeavor that you can do on this planet, i.e. mixed martial arts, if you don't come over a month in advance, I think you're really handicapping yourself. Any other thoughts on Mizugaki?
Basically, he was just better everywhere. I mean, the body clinch takedown was great. The ground and pound, his takedown defense. I mean, although those takedowns by Hoagland were pretty lazy, Hoagland just got outclassed. That's all I really got to say.
Hoagland did. He got clipped in the 3rd round, and in his scramble, he actually pulled out a nice little slam, but it ultimately didn't. I think almost immediately Mizugaki transitioned to half guard.
And Mizugaki cut him up real bad at the end of that 3rd round.
Oh yeah, with that short elbow.
Yeah, that was. If that fight would have gone on longer, it probably would have been stopped, to be honest.
He won a unanimous decision 30-25, 30-25, 30-27. That's about as lopsided as a mixed martial arts score you'll see.
Yeah.
Let's go to the token Chinese fighter, Tiquan Zhang, I know I'm not saying that right, versus John Tuck. This is a lightweight bout, and quite frankly, you and I had different opinions on this. You thought Zhang would pull a guillotine for submission of the night, home crowd favorite, and I actually thought, I think I picked John Tuck. And I was right, and you were wrong. In your face.
Yeah, I was wrong. Well, I think Zhang just made some big mistakes in this fight. Tuck established that he won the outside right as the fight began. Tiatren gets a big body clinch takedown, but then all of a sudden he starts getting dominated on the ground.
I know. Like MMA account, another user from MMA Share said, "I wonder how Tuck got so good living in Guam." I mean, he was phenomenal with his transitions on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, Tuck got guard and goes for an armbar. Zhang countered, but then Tuck gets his back, takes mount, side control, mount. It was crazy. And
the first 2 rounds, I could have been fighting Tuck. That's how dominant he was. He just took the back every time. He didn't seem to go for a finish, but oh my God, the guy was legit.
But both of those things happened by Zhang going for a takedown. Tuck wasn't going for the takedowns, which is very interesting to me. I'd like to see John Tuck go for more takedowns because, I mean, even when the second takedown that Zhang got was because John Tuck went for a flying knee, and he countered that with a takedown. He just got outclassed on the ground, though. 3rd round, purely stand-up, Zhang getting the better of it, landing left hooks, left hook after left hook, only going for hooks, though. And John Tuck looked like, I don't know what he was doing, because he looked great.
He gassed.
Yeah,
he gassed.
I think he gassed, too.
Good thing he's got a fairly good chin, or Zhang more likely has no power, because when he was doing this at the beginning of the 2nd round, he got cut, and then he started grappling, and he won the round. And then in the 3rd round, he's just standing there with his hands at his hips, getting hit in the face. I think Tuck's stand-up is going to really be exposed, particularly at 155. There's just too many killers. Let's talk about a sentimental favorite fight of yours. Japanese pride legend Takanori Gomi versus Mac Danzig. Mac Danzig, probably the whitest man in the universe.
The whitest, yeah. I love this fight. This fight got fight of the night, actually. I rooted against. I didn't root against Gomi, but I picked against Gomi. But right when the fight started, he looked more comfortable. His striking didn't look as rudimentary as it has in his last few UFC fights. He looked comfortable. He looked confident. Gomi gets the first takedown in the fight, and unlike usually, he had a really quick start. He's usually a pretty slow starter. Mac was trying to counter Gomi during the fight, but really wasn't landing much at all. And Danzig got that takedown near the end of the first. Yeah, Danzig looked better in the second round, but Gomi just kept landing those punches. He looked really great. Danzig was landing some good left hooks, but Gomi was basically getting the better of the striking role.
Gomi was game, and he was ready to exchange. He got another body clinch takedown. Again, that's the theme of this entire event: body clinch takedowns. I think it's kind of a sign that this card didn't have a lot of great fights. They had a lot of great skill on display, but there wasn't a lot of drama in the fights. That this fight got fight of the night. Yeah. And I think it's because Takanori didn't have a dance partner. Mac Danzig was almost standing in cement and just looking at him. Now, he did try to pull off the wrestler's trick of stealing a takedown at the end of the round, and on a couple judges' scorecards, that stole the round, which is absolutely ridiculous because Gomi won round 1, he won round 3. Absolutely. Ultimately ended up with Gomi putting his hands down and trying to goad Danzig to strike him, to punch him in the face. One, because I think he had no respect for Danzig's power, and two, Gomi's a counterpuncher.
Yeah.
Even then, Danzig wouldn't take the bait, and so we kind of had a fight with Gomi's resurgence without a real good opponent.
Gomi dropped Danzig at the end there, and he looked like he might finish him, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, it looked like Gomi of old. I mean, it seems like he is getting there to the point where he used to do his old status of being just a fluid, technical fighter. And I'm excited to see his next fight. I hope he can get back to his greatness, but we'll see.
So with Mac stealing round 1 with a takedown and trying to land another takedown with about a minute left in round 2, we went to the scorecards. Moose84 wrote this. He said, I have Gomi winning, but not by a lot, but still winning. He was the aggressor throughout the whole fight and won the battle on the feet. Danzig won the ground battle. These judges' scorecards will be interesting to say the least, and they were. They came back with a split decision. Do you think that's fair?
I really thought Gomi won this hands down. I thought he won round 1 and 3.
Yep.
For sure. I really wouldn't have called it a split decision. I mean,
I think Gomi dominated. I would say dominated. He definitely got the edge on the feet, and I think the ground was pretty even because if you remember, Gomi got his takedowns too.
Yeah.
I think a split decision was a bit kind to Danzig. I think it should have been 29-28 across the board.
Yeah. Same here.
Let's move on to the man whose stock is probably rising the fastest, and that's Dong-Hyun Kim versus Brazilian hero Paulo Thiago, and this is a 170 fight, welterweight.
To be honest, this was actually probably my favorite fight of the night. I love this fight. A lot of people, it might not be the most fan-friendly fight, but I absolutely love this. Dong-Hyun Kim looked absolutely incredible.
He looked like an energy vampire. He just latched on to Paulo Thiago and sucked him dry. So this is the South Korean judo equivalent of being wrestle-fucked, because Paulo Thiago literally didn't have 30 seconds of offense the entire fight.
Yeah, very true. I think he looked absolutely great out there. I was really impressed by him. I thought Dong-Hyun Kim would win, but I didn't think it would be this impressive. There's got to be something going on over in Korea to make people so awesome. These guys are getting better and better, and it's just awesome to see. I mean, out-grappling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt like Paulo Thiago like that was absolutely crazy. I mean, he went for the body takedown, landed in half guard, moved to back mount, got a body triangle.
Thiago spent the whole round in a body. I mean, he spent the whole fight in a body triangle.
Yeah, basically. I mean,
if you wanted to deliver mail to Paulo Thiago, you just write on there body triangle, and the postman would take it straight to him. It was ridiculous.
Exactly. I mean, Kim looked like the way stronger fighter out there. Paulo Thiago is the more imposing specimen, but Dong Hyun Kim is ridiculously strong. And that neck crank looked like it was very painful.
By the end of the fight,
got it.
Thiago completely broken, and Dong Hyun Kim is doing his best Donkey Kong impersonation with double-fisted ground and pound.
I call that the Sakuraba.
Here's some comments. This one's from Epic Movements. Epic Movements, by the way, big star. I think you had some of the most insightful comments on MMAshare.com regarding this stuff. Every time Paulo Thiago fights, I feel sorry for him. He's such a tough guy and a hero in his own country, but he keeps getting out-game planned. What he's talking about is Paulo Thiago is like the equivalent of like a SWAT or Special Forces police officer in Brazil. Does a lot of good in the community. I'm not sure if he's out-game planned as he is just overmatched, at least in this fight.
I agree. I think Paulo Thiago, I don't know what it is. He isn't doing too well recently. Paulo Thiago got completely outworked by Dong Hyun Kim. Dong Hyun Kim, in my opinion, is an elite welterweight and has been for a long time. The Damian Maia fight was kind of a fluke with the whole rib injury, and I mean he got knocked out by the current interim welterweight champion, which is not really anything to be too depressed about. Paulo Thiago, I mean. He got knocked out in his last fight against C.R. Bahadurzada, and he got completely outclassed by Dong Hyun Kim. It'd be interesting to see who they put him up against next and how he does, and if they cut him if he loses his next fight.
Yeah, I was going to say his next fight has to be a battle to stay in the promotion.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to the co-main event, Thiago Silva versus Stanislav Nedkov at 205. We both thought that Nedkov was going to just bull rush Silva and win this one, but that's not actually how it turned out.
Well, it kind of was for the first 2 rounds in a way.
I thought it was more measured. I thought that Silva was executing a game plan. I saw that you commented that you thought Silva looked like he was still hampered by his back injury. But if you watch, Nedkov puts his head down. By the way, huge size difference. Nedkov has no business fighting at 205. He is a Oompa Loompa at 205. Anyway, puts his head down, hook. Thiago, with his hands up, withdraws to the cage, and all Nedkov did was just hold on. He didn't even try to go for like a takedown. He just held on. Epic Movements wrote, Nedkov is one of those guys that throws haymakers with every punch. As long as Thiago Silva doesn't try to take him down like he did, doesn't let himself get taken down, it should be easy to finish. And that's exactly what we saw in the first 2 rounds. Although, Nedkov did land one of those hooks.
Yeah, well, Nedkov basically did everything I thought he would in the first 2 rounds. He just couldn't keep it up. I mean, he was throwing ridiculous hooks, muscling him, bullying him, but he ran out of gas. I mean, that's all that really happened. Now let's give Thiago Silva some credit. Nedkov did gas, but did you see Nedkov's legs, what they look like? Yeah, they were disgusting.
They were beet red, and Thiago didn't land that many kicks, but when he did, I think he took the legs out of Nedkov, combined with the fact he gassed. In round 3, he basically just laid down and said, "Choke me, please."
That is true. The weird thing is, though, is I didn't see Nedkov being gassed in the second, and then the 3rd round comes around, he looks like he was completely done, which was really strange to me. It was very fast.
I think the damage to that lead leg was more telling than what people thought. Because if you watch the fight again, watch that lead leg. Every time he plants on it, it looks a bit insecure. It wobbles a bit.
Yeah, and at one point he got kicked by Thiago Silva, and he kind of pretended like he got hit in the groin because he was obviously hurt, which I kind of noticed being at the point where he started to fade, but I thought he could still take it in that last round. But
let's move on to perhaps the biggest surprise in recent memory: Lee versus Franklin at 185. Everyone, myself included, and shame on me because I have Vietnamese in-laws. We're picking Franklin to just run over Lee.
God, this was...
Floyd wrote this. Gun won't last 5 rounds. But you and I, when we talked about it on our preview, we said if Lee was going to win this, he would win it in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, and he did.
Yeah. Wow. How'd he do it?
Well, Rich started out by establishing the punching range like I said he should, and landing his signature left straights, put some combos together. Then Rich went for a left outside leg kick, and as Boss Rutan always says, never throw a single kick. He dropped his left hand, Kung Lee basically did a jumping overhand right. Both of his feet were off the ground, and it was one of the scariest knockouts I've seen all year. In my opinion, not only was it knockout of the night, it was knockout of the year.
I made this observation, but we'll use a comment from, I'm going to not pronounce this guy's name right, Valace, I don't know. Gung coming out fighting defensively completely threw Franklin off and how fast he can be. Amazing win. Gung can be very dangerous with this kind of focus. He is devastating with his strikes if he just doesn't come out too strong. I completely agree. I think a combination of Lee having a hurt foot and not being able to train, and that hurt foot also limiting his kicks. I think Lee threw one kick in the first round, which is extremely unusual for him. Normally he's throwing all kinds of pretty spinning kicks, axe kicks, all these things. But this time he seemed very measured, very controlled, and he was pacing himself. And that allowed him to eat that leg kick. He checked it, kept his eyes up, and then threw that overhand right and clipped Franklin as perfect as you can clip another human being. And I'm surprised Franklin didn't break his neck from literally face planting right into the canvas.
That was pretty bad. Lee, the thing about Lee is I think the reason he was so measured is because he knew that he did not have the gas tank to go 5 rounds. I think he knew he needed to land a punch like that, and luckily for him, he did. Hopefully, in his future fights, he can work on his gas tank more.
Let's talk about future fights. Do you think this is the end for Rich Franklin?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I think Rich Franklin will always be the kind of guy, at least for probably like 3 or 4 more years, that just has interesting fights, which is the spot where I see Uriah Faber at right now. I kind of equate him to that. They'll never be champion again, but they just need to get interesting fights.
Here's the problem with Franklin. Is he's an in-betweener. He's not a 205er, and he's too big for 185. So he's always either going to be drained, he's going to look washed out like he did in this fight from cutting, or he's going to be physically too small.
Yeah.
The other problem is this, is if Franklin has lost his chin, then he doesn't have a place anymore. What about Lee?
Yeah.
I thought Lee actually might take this as a retirement fight. Go out on a really good high note, fighting in Asia for the first time for the UFC.
I'm not sure who I'd like to see Lee fight next. Maybe one of the guys from Strikeforce, like Vince St. Preux or something. I don't know. Kung Lee is kind of in a weird spot right now. I think everybody kind of expected Kung Lee to lose this fight, so it really puts him in an interesting position.
And he's 40, right? And he's already got an old man body. I think he should hang him up. Do movies, but he's 40.
I think he can have 1 or 2 more fights in the UFC just to say that he did well in the UFC, and then we'll see where he goes from there.
Well, what do you think about, that's the card from the prelims all the way to the main event. What do you think about the overall card?
Oh, I thought it was great. I mean, it may not be the biggest and most fan-friendly card, but I really appreciated it. I had a great time. I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, started watching it about 4:30. I thought it was a great card, to be honest. I liked all the fights. It would have been nice to see some more finishes, but that's just the way things went. So
this was a strange card, and it seems like every time the UFC goes into a new market, they have strange cards. Epic Movements, my favorite poster from this last event, he wrote this. He said, "I think it's the curse of the first. Usually whenever it's some type of first in terms of country or state or pay-per-view or new channel like Fox, something always ends up anticlimactic. Like the UFC in Abu Dhabi, you had Anderson Silva losing his mind for the entire fight against Maia, dancing around and not doing anything. You had the UFC on Fox, 60-second fight between Junior Dos Santos and Kane. Calgary was another card. This event, the UFC on Fox was more of a fight was more of an event, or more of the collection of fights was more for, I think, the MMA hardcore fan.
Yeah.
Because when you watch someone like Don Young Kim, you can appreciate it. And I think the majority of the audience were these opportunistic ticket holders. Like they just happened to be in Macau, or they were expats there. They said, hey, the UFC's coming here. Let's go see it. And you could see it from sort of their belligerent attitude during some really exciting and dominant performances. They were booing. Yeah,
it was strange to see. I think most of the Chinese market really isn't hardcore fans. I mean, they haven't had anybody to really watch in the UFC besides Tietren Zhang, so I don't really think they're the best market right now. It can definitely grow, but as far as being hardcore fans, like say the Japanese or some of the Americans, I don't think they're there yet.
I don't know if Macau can even be considered as symbolic or representative of what China would feel about mixed martial arts.
That is
Because
true.
there were, like I said, the crowd seemed like it was 80% white faces, and then some regional Asians thrown in. Probably not very many Chinese. Probably a lot from Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. If they really want to break into China, I think they have to do an event in a Chinese city,
Yeah, like Hong Kong.
like Beijing or
Yeah.
Shanghai or Canton or one of those places. And I think they have to start by getting here. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's this misnomer about Asians that they will only cheer for other Asians. You know who the most famous soccer player in Asia is?
No, I don't.
It's not a Chinese person. It's David Beckham. It's Lionel Messi. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. They want to see greatness. So if you bring top-level fighters like a GSP or Anderson Silva or Junior Dos Santos, I think China will fall in love with those personalities.
Yeah, I could see that. China is a big market, but I don't think it's the most lucrative. In my opinion, South Korea is. With all these stars coming out of South Korea, I think that needs to be their next focus. I think they need to go to South Korea next. I think it'd be perfect. Put Chan Sung Jung on there. Put Dong Hyun Kim on there. I mean, it'd be awesome.
Ben Henderson, that's who mainlines that card.
That would be a good one.
So for me, just to put a final note on Macau, I think doing Macau and saying, can they get into China, it's like doing an event in Puerto Rico and saying, did we get America? No.
Fair enough. I thought the fight card was a success, but yeah, to really break into the Chinese market, they need to go to a Beijing or Hong Kong or something like that.
Well, that's it. That's our review. That's the breaking news. I want to do a quick shout out to Kyle Pezich for helping us out with our audio. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Kyle.
Also, please be sure to check out whatculture.com. Lots of articles on film, video games, all sorts of entertainment and pop culture. Also, our buddies at MMAshare.com, the one place for everything mixed martial arts. Any final words there, Mr. Derek?
No, just thanks, guys, for listening, and be nice.
Yeah, and thank you again for all the comments. You guys make what we do a lot easier. See ya.
Bye.
Gangsta-ass niggas don't flex nuts, 'cause real gangsta-ass niggas know they got 'em. And everything's cool in the mind of a gangster, 'cause gangsta-ass niggas think deep. Up 365, ayo, 24/7, 'cause real gangsta-ass niggas don't sleep. And all I gotta say to you, wanna be, cocksucker, pussy, pranksters.